with Homer because he's attributed to writing the Iliad, and it's composed of the words Om, the sun, as you said. You actually did Mer, which is brilliant because that would be the like mermaid. It's always of the sea, but it's also Ir, which is the beginning of a cycle, the spring of a year, the morning of a day. And so that would be the sun in Aries. And it's claimed that the Oya, or the OIA in Greece, and what Tripoli used to be, OEA, they're named after that phonetic, which means one or unique. And Troia means 3 in 1, just like Trinity, just like Trimuti, right? That's where the Trinity comes from, Trimuti, 3 gods, 1 form. Now, there are places with similar names in Africa and Asia, all over the world. And the triune symbolism leads, without exception, to the acceptable year of the Lord. And so the gods assemble on the north side of the zodiac, or the sacred enclosure of the 12 stones, because the stars of the north never go into Egypt or below the horizon or cross the rivers of the equinoxes or the equator. So that's why the stars of the north are looked at as gods, eternal, right? And the ones that go below the horizon are the ones that go into Egypt. And so this is part of the reason why our culture is so stunted, is we are looking at things that are astrotheological stories and accepting them as history. And they don't understand that Egypt was not a historical location, just like Israel was never a historical location. I'll wager my soul. If you're going to contradict me, put your fucking soul on the line and let's get it going. Because you will not find this stuff in any historical context. It's all a product of the modern era, right? And so these stars, these gods, they spin around Polaris all year round. And as long as you can recognize their positions, you know exactly what season you're in, or at least approximately what time of year it is and which direction is north. And so another name for Troy, or encoding it, is that word Tripoli. And it's now spelled, it used to be spelled Tripoly. Now it's spelled Tripoli. And Ilion, Ilion, is Elyon, Elyon, the highest God. So Troia is 3 in 1, God the Most High, which is what lions are named after. And that's, what do lions correspond to? The sun. What does the Trinity correspond to? The sun.
Right. And it just makes me think, just seeing all these connections growing up, and as well as when I was in New York City, seeing how many lion statues are everywhere. And you see that symbolism all the time. And I just remember, even just like I said, growing up and going into the city of Chicago, you just see them all over. And you're like, what does that mean? Why is it there? And now with this information, it all pertains back to the sun. And it really does, man, because as you show time and time again in the books, these comparisons. And it's not just the sun, but what's really fascinating, and you show this in the book, is that all of these characters are showing, basically the sun at different points of the year. And that's that one was the moments that blew my mind. So I don't know if that gets too far off track of what we're talking about, but you're saying...
No, it doesn't at all. It's all related. So there's no going off track here, because this system, it's funny because Chance and I were just talking about this last night off the record. We were just going back and forth, like how the system is constantly returning to itself. It's like an eternal bloom, but then also an eternal return. Mm-hmm. And what I was saying when I was having this conversation was, I don't subscribe to the, like, him and his buddies, they do their own syncretism thing, and the way they take it is it's yes and. And while I believe, or I can observe, that human thought and consciousness is constantly yes and, yes and, I totally disagree with that when it comes to trying to figure out a symbolic system, because in the early days of the system, it was extremely rigid. And so the priests, the church, if you look at the early symbolism, the reason it's crude is because you were only allowed to use certain colors, certain symbols that way. And things would be introduced at a very slow, gradual rate so that those symbols mean something and they don't get lost in people using it casually to attach to other things. And the reason we're so fucked up now is because in the Common Era, when I say the Common Era, like the last 2,000 years, you have everybody and their brother coming in and doing their own thing with it, especially the alchemists. You have them taking all the names of the sun and then reassigning them to names of the planets. And so this happens between the 2nd century BC and like the 1st century AD. And so now you have planets that are named after the sun: Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, Mars. These are all old names of the sun without exception. And the only people that don't understand that are linguistically and symbolically illiterate. And you should ignore them because they're putting out a bunch of nonsense when it comes to this stuff. And that's why I wrote these books in the first place, because too many people are leading you astray. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just because they're reading a bunch of modern shit and then they're regurgitating all the modern shit. And what makes my work exceptional is I don't really touch anything from them. I go back as far back as I can go, and I do the work. And I do it through language and symbolism from cultures all over the world. And then I put it together and show you my journey. And so the SpiritWhirled series is basically the path that I've carved that you can go look at and then research every single word that you come across that's foreign or whatever. It's like a tree. Just go follow those branches and see where it goes. And you might be able to piece together more important stuff than I could.
Well, one of the things that